Hi guys, my name is Nemanja. I'm the founder of the Funky Marketing, and today we're gonna talk about specific things, how we actually close 63 deals in a year and a half for my company by doing that. Basically, we had 47 in a year, and later we implemented the same for the clients. So basically, we created an approach to build B2B content marketing strategy from the target audience, creating a distributed personalized content and leveraging various platforms for maximum reach. Basically, we wanted to emphasize the speed and distribution over content creation alone, and that way implement some of the things from B2C inside the B2B, which is like emotional branding, storytelling, to engage audience effectively and basically present ourselves as the bigger than we actually were at those moments. That was the first year of Funky Marketing, and it guided us to riding on a wave of lead gen, moving into demand gen, and basically closing a lot of clients all inbound, and all of them came through LinkedIn or through referrals.
If that resonates with you, listen along. Also, check out our other episodes. You're listening to TLDR, the B2B SaaS growth podcast brought to you by Spear Growth. The goal of the podcast is to enable you, our listeners, to generate an additional $100,000 in cumulative pipeline by May 2024. To do this, we bring people who have made a real impact in their companies. They cut through the fluff and dive deep into one tactic or strategy of theirs. I'm your host Ishan. Let's generate pipeline. Hey Nemanja, thank you so much for joining in today.
I'm glad to be here chatting with you and getting to know you actually. Yeah, we had a chat over LinkedIn, but face to face is another thing.
Oh yeah, I mean you post in so many videos that it feels like, yeah, I've always seen you moving and talking and, in your podcast, in your LinkedIn videos. So now you feel familiar because of that. Which is nice.
And that's one of the things that we're going to mention today, because when I record the podcast and those kind of things, I like to do the live streaming as well. That's something that we didn't do back then, for the time period that we're going to talk about, but we implemented it later, and basically it's just another layer of everything, and it got us to a totally different audience on LinkedIn.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Cool. So for everyone, very quickly, can you just introduce yourself and Funky Marketing, and then we'll dive deep into the tactic.
Yeah, basically, I'm somebody who has a background in non-formal education, then in B2C marketing, and since 2020, I founded Funky Marketing. We focus on B2B, mainly helping companies generate demand, mainly in that field. And I'm trying kind of to evangelize companies going back to doing great things and doing marketing as it should be done, right? So that's kind of what we do. We work mostly with B2B tech companies. That's about that.
Perfect. So I think Spear Growth and Funky, we started in 2021 for instance, and we also work B2B SaaS, which is B2B tech, right? So yeah, it's I'm very familiar with the market since then. That's amazing. So I think when you say you help companies generate demands, or can you just talk about the one tactic that you had? Can you first start with reiterating the results that you got for yourself and both your clients? Like what exactly were they?
Yeah. Look, all depends. I mean, we'll go with one, but we have totally different things depending on what do they choose, right? Sometimes it's a sprint, sometimes it's a long time effort. All depends what are their capacities, right? Most of the companies have different capacities. Some of them can record videos, some of them can't, some of them can write, some of them have the subject matter expert. All depends. Some of them have good data, so they can establish good partnerships and the research. But one of the most common things that I'm seeing is that companies already have great content on a website created for the SEO, which has never been shared on social. And sometimes when it has been shared, basically it's only on the company page, and like 14 people saw it, including the relatives, right? So it's left there on the website to die. And it's not the content that's bottom of the funnel that will attract people to actually, when they find them on Google, come to close. So what we found out, okay, we can sort out the foundation of the company. Do they have the right USP? Who are they targeting? What are their capacities? Those kind of things. Do the research, talk to the customers, and set up all those things. Not to get into that, but messaging, positioning, and all those stuff. And basically, then we comes to the thing. They say, what can we do to actually get to the customers directly right away, right? Usually people say it's PPC, and I said it's let's get them on the call and talk with them. So it's kind of like the podcast, like those kind of things. So what do we do first? We use the content that they have on their blogs to basically giving adjust it to the social, to the way we need to create it to post it on social, and add a tone of voice of each person, which profile that we are using to actually distribute it. Right. So those are kind of the foundational thing. We optimize the profiles, we optimize all those things, and then when we share it, it appears as a totally new content. And out of one article, we can have like 3 to 6, maybe even more posts. So then we have the content, right? And the thing is, those articles becomes one content pillar. So, okay, we have written content. We can then change those things to be like a quote with visual. It can be infographic. It can be shared as a lot of different things, even a short video explaining it. Also, then we start thinking, okay, we want to get our ideal customers to talk with them. So we have a series of interview or the podcast or something like that. We already did it for ourselves, right? That's the thing that I said from the start. So I'm going through that. And basically what we want to do, we want to get our, possibly the champion account to the podcast to talk about themselves. Everybody likes to talk about themselves, so we like to have them on the podcast, and then we can ask them all kind of questions like, how is decision making process going inside the company? Who is involved in it? Where do they go to get educated? Where do they go when they want to buy? Who do they follow? All those things. Do they already have a vendor? And basically we get all those things. We have 50 minutes before the recording, we have 50 minutes after the recording, so we can actually get to know each other and start creating a relationship, right? So basically we involve them into the content creation, and after that inside the content distribution. There is no better thing than creating content and distributing it with your ideal customer, right? So those are like the big accounts that we want to close in time, not right away.
Interesting. So let's stick to the. So you mentioned that I think in a year, and just please correct me if I'm wrong. In a year, you were able to close 47 deals
Yes.
through inbound content, right? So I just want to understand. So in this particular instance, right? And you, thank you so much for sharing all the different things we can do, right? So you mentioned content repurposing using existing content that people have. That was the first thing you mentioned.
Yes.
Or in no order. Another thing that you mentioned was just showcasing expertise of the company itself. The third thing that you mentioned that I got was, let's say if there's someone you want to close, just bring them on a podcast and then speak with them. And
Yeah, but basically there is one more nuance to that. It is establish our authority, right? I mentioned at the beginning we want to look
yeah.
bigger as we are, and we get that by having people who have the authority in the space to come
Yeah.
to talk to us.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about um, the specific instance when like of what you did, right? So if you had to break it down into buckets or almost like a timeline perspective of the project, like what are all the let's say I'm not doing anything today, right? Or like what was your state then? Did you start posting on LinkedIn first? Did you start a podcast? Like what was the first thing that you did in this case?
Yeah, the thing is, when we started, we had my personal brand, mainly
Hmm.
here in the Southeast Europe, in the Balkans,
Yeah.
but not outside of it. So we started with that. I started posting content, those kind of things. I realized early I had like, this is maybe the important thing to say. I talked to 260, 70 people and realized there is a gap in B2B that I can fill in with what I know from B2C. right? And that was the time when we started talking, that lead gen is not effective anymore. It's transactional. We need to sell through the relationships, and B2C moment is coming to B2B. From that perspective, like Chris Walker and other people started talking about it, and there was a wave, right? Just starting. So what I did, I went to the Google Doc, right, and started writing things down. I wanted to have at least a few articles when I state, okay, there is a current situation, um, there is a problem that you have, and there is a solution. Basically, simple articles that I can use even when people ask me, what do you think about it? What is the solution? I can just share the link, right? So that was the first pillar that we have, that we took content out of it for distribution.
So you had a personal brand in one region. You then figured out, okay, what is my unique advantage, and you really stuck to that. I think even in your content, even when I remember you as, okay, what do you talk about? There is a central theme to it. That I think that's an important bit, that you figure out that, hey, you have very good experience in B2C, so and you know how to implement that in B2B also, and that's your unique, I think, positioning or narrative, or what do you want to call it.
Yeah,
From there,
is exactly. The thing is, before we started all this, the first client that I nailed was Impact Belgrade, and basically we helped them with getting startups into the pre-accelerator. So basically, I had a chance to prove my hypothesis. Right? It wasn't just in my head. I proven it with talking and working with like 200 startups from the Impact Hub pre-accelerator. They weren't my clients, so I had a chance to prove the hypothesis, and then when I got the confidence based on that, I just went all in.
perfect. So you mentioned that your narrative that you had, or your strength that you claimed, before you made that claim you had proof, and you had done it a bunch of times. Then as you continued posting things on LinkedIn, you built a few pillar articles. Can you, and you listed down a lot of questions or things that you want to talk about, and in that you also start building out some pillar articles. Can you mention like how many, and give a few examples of topics, so that if someone else wants to do it, they can also, yeah.
Exactly. I think we don't have that many articles even on a website. Like this thing that we're talking about, that was the first article, right? I stated the whole strategy, and it was all there. The second one was the continuation. So how do we shorten the sales cycle? So what we do after that? And then basically we go, what are the metrics that the SaaS companies should follow? Then we went into the specifics about LinkedIn, about Twitter, about what we do. Basically, we break down all the things that we do into an articles, and then I think we concluded it with the article that says, like, I don't know if it's 10 or what is the number of the things that B2B CMOs should be aware of, right? So then we moved it to that level, and basically having like an overview. Listen, back in the days, not many people understood what demand creation, demand closing was. So we needed to explain a lot of those things. And finally, I think that the biggest chunk of it all, it's how do we do the whole strategy. So from talking to the customers, creating the strategic narrative, then positioning, messaging, and then how do we implement all of those things. So it's all there on the website. And when I got into the conversation with the potential customers that the content gets me in, I can basically just share them the links. Right? This is how we do. If check it out. If that seems like the right fit, we go for it.
Understood. So, in your case, and if someone else listening wants to replicate it, these were the articles that Nemanja you created, and yeah, I think everyone would have to do their own research to figure out what something that they could create. But one is going to be, you had your own methodology, like the entire thing. Did you hold back? Did you sort of not sort of share something more advanced, or were you like, hey, let's share everything step by step that they can implement on their own?
Yeah, I'm the guy who shares everything step by
Perfect.
step,
Okay.
and I want people, when they come to the website, they know how we work.
Perfect. Yeah. So one is the method. The second one that you said was, okay, something that's a continuation. I really like how you called it a continuation, which was how to reduce sales cycles because you're already getting leads. So that's something new to me. The third one was the metrics. Fourth one was specifics like of the same strategy but on channels, so you can go one level deeper. And the another one that you mentioned was more on a strategic top level for your target audience. This is like a good mix of articles. uh, so you are just to confirm, you're still continuing posting on LinkedIn, you're also developing these articles. Now when you're developing these articles, how you said that you distribute this in conversations. If someone asks something, you have a much more deeper link to share than others would. Apart from that, how did you distribute this content piece?
Yeah, we can add one more thing. I didn't plan to talk about it, but we can do it. And basically, when you share an article or a piece from that article, what you can do, and I've been testing it, and it proves like the right thing. I've been using that afterwards. Is I have like 4 or 5 people that are subject matter expert on the topic, right? And I tag them and I ask them for their opinions. So they give me the opinions, and then I update the article. And it's not only our point of view; it's their point of view as well. But the thing is, what you do, you want to show yourself through different types of content, right? First pillar are the articles. The second one is video, audio, all depends how you do. We do video, and then we distribute it as audio and as video as well. And I think that one, the second one, is the main one. It's the Funky Marketing podcast. We had another podcast, but we'll focus on this one. And basically, here at first I wanted to have like 10 people that I consider are up there with where I want to be, and I wanted to get their background, what's their experience, how did they get there, those kind of things, so I can compare, can I actually work in that field. When I saw that I have even more experience than some of them, I said, okay, now we can discuss, and it became a discussion. And based when you have a healthy discussion, you can get a lot of things out of it, right? So basically, out of it, I can get the things that I can use to talk to the customers who are not problem aware, to the customers who are problem aware, and to those who are choosing between us and somebody else, right? So I can have different sets of short videos from that long one, and use that to kind of, as you said, people will remember, how do I look, how do I talk, do I actually know what I'm talking about, and who's with me on those videos as well. I mean, I'm not talking just out of my head. I literally had messages when I said, with somebody that I was connected with, hey, just wanted to say hi. And that lady said, when can we schedule a call? And I was like, that was too fast. So on a call, I asked her, what did she do? And she said, they were looking for somebody to replace the CMO. So she was on a look, she was head of product. So she connected with me at the times. It was like a few weeks before that. And when I sent her a message, she checked out a couple of my last posts. She saw who's reacting on those posts. Does she know those people? Then she checked who are our mutual friends, and basically go out and check my work experience. That was enough for her to schedule a call, right? So usually that's how it works. But to get you, so okay, we create the long form video, right? And the most important thing is, what do we do with it then? Because we want to be fast. We want
Just
speed to be a.
sorry, just
Mhm.
one question there. When did you start the podcast? Was it after? I'm not saying when you recommend to. When did you start the podcast? Was it after you create the pillar content, or before, or just from a
Yeah,
timeline?
I first started with distributing, creating and distributing the text articles.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I don't know, in like January, and
Mm-hmm.
in October we started with a podcast. So
Understood.
that's how it's like. I yesterday checked the date, the
Yeah,
month,
yeah, yeah.
so I know. Yeah,
Perfect. And how many?
the
How many? What's the frequency of this podcast? And like, for example, there are also is who do you call as guests, right? So for example, you've mentioned people who you want to work with. Then there's also a balance between people who you want to be seen with, and they might not be people who you definitely want to work with. So I mean, like, they might not be industry influencers, for example, right? So how do
yeah.
you decide a ratio for that?
Yeah, those are great questions. from the start, I wanted just to establish the authority. So it's something contrary to what I would recommend to the most of the companies I work with. I'll tell later why. I wanted to establish the authority, and basically in a month, I recorded like 20 episodes. So sometimes even a few per day, because basically it gave me ammunition, let's call it like that, to have a content for the next 6 months through that. And I published once a week. That was my capacity and the team capacity at the time. Even like for 3 years, I posted it once a week. Now this year we are going. Actually, it happened a few months ago. So even in the third year, we started posting like twice a month to see what will happen, right? But I didn't want the podcast to be like I'm famous for the podcast. I wanted it to bring other things. So authorities in the field first, definitely, and then people who are like my peers who can recommend it to other companies in the US. Right, that was the thing, because if I didn't work with the US based companies, they don't want to work with me. Right, they want to work with people who have worked with similar companies from similar industries from the US, and it's totally different than the companies at the same stage in the Europe. And there's a specific reason why they say that. So I needed to make a bridge towards that, and it's the people who are coming to the podcast. So podcast was basically my entry to the US market. And why I wouldn't recommend to other people to start with the authority is basically, those are companies that already most of the times have the authority. Right. And I basically tell them, we create a list of like 50 potential customers, and then we invite champion account from those companies to come to the podcast, because the goal is to create relationship with our potential customers.
Understood. And if I forced you to share like a ratio of like how many people who are industry influencers, and how many people who would be future potential, customers or dream customers or whatever, like what would that ratio look like?
Yeah, I think is 80 or 90% are the my peers and people from the industry.
Yeah.
Basically, I went all in on that because I figured out I still needed to figure out at that times, how do I actually sell? What do I do specifically? That fluctuated and changed
Yeah.
as the
Of
demand
course. Yeah. Yeah.
generation. Even today, people have different opinions about it, right?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I went in on that, and basically most of the customers they came through the content or through the referrals. So it worked.
Perfect. Okay. So once you started, I think that's a similar thread that you followed, right? So you made a pillar content that was text based, and then you started repurposing it and reusing it and distributing it. Then you made another pillar content source or type that was the podcast, and then you started repurposing it, distributing it, and tagging it, I guess, in your conversations also, right? As you say that you then make it into ammunition. So is that I think the core of the strategy, in terms of execution, right? Obviously not in terms of strategy, but in terms of execution, is that how you recommend that, hey, have, based on the team's bandwidth or what are you comfortable or whatever, just figure out, okay, what is a core pillars that you can create, and then just start distributing it. And then if later on, if you can create a second set of core pillar type content or series or whatever, then you create that and then you start redistributing it.
Yeah. I'm a little bit crazy, so I did all of it, and even the third and the fourth pillar at once. But usually, yes, that's the kind of the things that you want to do. I mean, you need to know who you are creating it for and why you are creating it for. Then why you want to have like the content pillars is because you don't want to wake up another day and say, oh, what should I post today? Because usually that happens when you don't have the content pillar. You need to extract content from somewhere, and second, if you can create it, co-create it with your target audience, there's no better fit. It's better than the advertising. Then basically you need to figure out what are the channels where your target audience is spending time and what's the most convenient for you, and then distribute the content so it fits those channels, right? It means a lot of different things from different channels, and I like to distribute content in a different way. You don't need to focus on one, but one is where your customers are, right? So we used LinkedIn as the main channel when we distribute the content, but we also had like Twitter for different things. We had Facebook when we have some small communities and those kind of things, and Instagram for some reels for those kind of things. So from that perspective, we knew what we wanted to do to take from each channel, and then we have, when you have like the bigger piece, then of course we use the Anchor to distribute it to all the podcast platforms and YouTube, because YouTube is good for branding, right? So from that perspective, those were the things. And then what I didn't have a need to do it for ourselves, but we do it for the clients. When we set up the content distribution organic, then what we do, we go and we use ads to basically make sure that the right people are consuming it, and we just want them to consume. When they consume it and when they see a fit, then basically they in their mind they think, aha, okay, so these guys are the first one we go to.
Understood. Let's talk numbers actually, right? So I'm going to ask you. So I think I have. And by the way, thank you so much for sharing like the thought process, the strategy bit, the distribution bit, what worked for you, what do you recommend. There's a lot of angles that you shared the same answers with, which is very helpful for different people. Let's talk about like numbers, and let's start with the one I know for now. So you mentioned that you closed 47 deals in 1 year. Now, how do you, so because attribution is very difficult with content and inbound, so how do you say it's attributed to this strategy?
Yeah, I always have had a question on my website, even though before it became a thing people talk about,
Yeah.
right? How did you hear about us? And I have another one, which is, why do you want to work with us? Right. So those are the questions, and I can see clearly what people are saying. They say LinkedIn, they say Nemanja jumps out of Pate on LinkedIn. Even some of them said, when I shared something related to the go-to-market strategies, they said, the reason is that your take on go-to-market is totally different than what I'm seeing in industrial space where we're based, and I want to try it. I want to try the hypothesis. So, and also some people say, like Peplaya recommended you, or Refine Labs recommended you, or those kind of things. And there were some who were saying like, I don't know, our consultant recommended you. I don't know those people, right? I didn't know them. I because they were seeing my content, and when they needed somebody for that, they say, go to Nemanja and Funky Marketing team. Even like Refine Labs, what was kind of interesting, people consider us competitors. At the times, I knew that is not possible, but okay, that's how it looked like, and that's that effect of having like looking like you have a bigger brand, right? Or having a brand at all. In the first year, it's not possible, but it may look like that. So basically, companies came to Refine Labs and say, I don't know, their starting point was $25,000, I think. So they either say, we don't have that much of money, what can you recommend? Or they said, we are working with, I don't know, with some of the CRMs that Refine Labs is not working. So they say, maybe you can ask Nemanja. So Megan from Refine Labs basically referred them to us, and those are kind of the things where I knew that it's working, especially when I hear, okay, the location, why do you want to work with us, and it's tell us exactly why. The first question is, okay, how did you hear about us? But the second one uncovers the value. Right. So then using that, we further optimized things.
That's really interesting. Like when that you asked why do you want to work with us already? So that's actually a good one. I don't have it on my website. Haven't seen it on a lot of different websites, but I can see how they'll add value. Uh,
Yeah,
I think.
the thing is
Yeah.
just to add, if somebody is
Mhm.
coming from Google, you know, on that second question, they will say, I don't know, like reputation in the industry or some kind of
Yeah.
bullshit like that, and then you know that they have no idea about it. Or some that come to recommendation, they will say, for example, like if Pep Lyer recommended you, I don't have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes 100% sense. Okay. So I think you started your content like the big text style content pillar first and then the distribution of it while you maintained building up the channels. Then you started podcasting at the end of, I think in October you mentioned. And then you also mentioned you started two other pillars. Is it fair to say that let's say the 47 deals that you're referring to, right? They would like it takes a while for a pillar plus distribution to really take off. Do you think most of that would have come because of the content pillar and the LinkedIn distribution?
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't take long. That's the first thing. That's why I'm talking about speed, right? Because with a small team, you can do a lot in a short period of time. And there's if you check out now the company pages from like the big enterprise companies, and you check out somebody who like your team or mine, we produce more content than those companies, mainly because we don't have that many people, that many eyeballs on each piece, and you know how it goes. So we know exactly what we're doing, and we're able to implement it fast. And that's one advantage that I wanted to use. But the thing is, before we started, we had a narrative and the story, which is mine, and then it's the company one. And even the name of the company is Funky Marketing. So we have an interesting name, and the story that goes to it, I tie it to. I'm not gonna tell it now. I wrote it many times, but it's basically the story about my Marvin Gaye singing first time the national anthem on the All Star game in a different way. Basically the somebody who is underappreciated by everybody. They don't see it. He comes and he delivers and over delivers. That's how I see us coming from Serbia. So that was the narrative, and I'm a pretty open guy, so I built and shared in public, and that also affected the openness. Also, one of the things I said, send welcome message to each connection. So basically, I at least share the message, no matter if we talked or Shane. So when they see my content, they come and they want to send me a message. They say, this guy already reached out to me and I didn't respond." Right.
Interesting. Okay. So but so when you say, let's say if someone launches a pillar, and then they start redistributing it, or repurposing it into smaller pieces and then distributing it, and then also they are, let's say, active on LinkedIn, they are posting regularly, they're commenting regularly, there's connecting with the right people, they have the narrative in place. So after that, let's say they've launched one pillar and then they start repurposing and distributing it. How long do you think can you walk us through the timeline? So just on a pure an average case, right? That hey, uh, we launch we create 5 pieces of pillar content. Here is the date where the repurposing starts. Here is how we're doing distribution, and then here's when we start seeing some inbound come in. Like, what would
Yeah.
that timeline look like?
Yeah. The timeline, it's kind of interesting. Usually it's around 6 months if you
Hmm.
want to be
Yeah.
real and honest. And if you use advertising, it will be cut in half. Right. So it all depends how it goes. And usually when we start with posting and repurposing, it matters if we already have the authority. So do people already know us? Who do we have in our connection? So basically we will become from the start just more visible. And it comes down to what we have done before. So, that's kind of where the first results are coming. But we had luck with, I don't know, with Turkish startup called User Guiding. Basically in the first 2 weeks, since the CEO, CTO, and I think the product uh, head of product started posting, basically they got invite to go and talk with do the workshop for Google Docs team, to talk about user onboarding, those kind of things. And the CEO got 2 messages from the people who wanted to be part of the next investment round. So even in the first 2 weeks, you can have results if you have a good company, a good product, and you already have some good people in your connections. Maybe what I want to add, and I think it's relevant for the people. It was 3 of us in the team in the first year. Then we added a few more people in the second year. But the thing that I did early on, I basically extracted the whole process of how we onboard people. So basically, when somebody joins the team, because we are all marketers in the team, they all learn how to write, how to create posts from LinkedIn, how to repurpose, how to do all those things, and each person gets the feedback from everybody in the team. So I don't have to deal with it later, right? Right from the start, I train them, and then it's much easier.
Understood. So from a timeline perspective, you said 6 months. Is it 6 months from the time you start posting? Is it 6 months from the day you decide you want to start posting, you strategize, you start building the pillars? Is 6 months from the day, from what time?
From when you start posting.
From when you start
Right.
posting. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, yeah. I mean, look, it all depends. If you want to have only, like, let's say you want to have a series of interviews, 10 interviews with 10 people from the, ideal customers, and you want to create like a 3 months program to kind of distribute that, and you have all done the research before, so you don't need to talk with them to kind of get more insights, right? You just want to sell. From that perspective, you can create in a week 10 episodes, even less. And then basically it just takes time to edit. It doesn't take much time for that to do it. Even today, now we have Opus and other AI tools. Basically, in after you record it in an hour, you can have short episodes.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
basically, you just need to write up the copy for that, schedule those things, and go for it. Maybe that can be interesting thing for the people. I use the parts when I or whoever is the host to post on that person's profile, and the parts when we have the guest talking, we usually use that parts on the company page. And basically, we tag them, and we try to build the company page by building the brands of our ideal customers from that perspective. And to give you an additional thing, it's basically in the part how we shorten the sales cycle. It's, let's say we have a few more people in the team, like marketing or sales, whoever it is. We try to connect with more people from that company who are, included in decision making process, right? So maybe the guy who was with us on the podcast, he doesn't realize the aha moment, right? Maybe it's not the person that will use the tool. So we try to connect with others, and it basically give more eyeballs on our content. And so from that perspective, it actually shortens the things, because we create a relationship not only with the decision maker, but with other people who can impact the decision making process from the company. And if you look out, like basically what people do with ads is the same thing, right? The thing with LinkedIn, and when you start posting regularly, is that it works like retargeting, right? Every time you can post just 3 times per week. Every time you come to your feed, you see the post from that person, because posts last for a week, let's say. So if you do that organically, it already looks like you are doing retargeting. And if you add advertising to it, basically you just want to see in the impressions that those people are actually consuming the content, right? That's the only thing that you want to know, because you are already engaging with them organically, right? So you don't need to go to those. Usually when it comes to advertising, you have these 3 pillars: awareness, when you actually waste the money so you can be seen, but this way you are seen through organic content. You have the second pillar, which is engagement. You are engaging with them. So basically you merge those two segments in one. And then of course you have like lead gen pillar, where you actually try to schedule calls or get them to demo or whatever it is that you want them to do.
Understood. Okay, there's a lot of ways you've sort of divided. Okay, this is how to do things, and there's a lot of different small tactics which all
Yeah.
play in together for it to actually make work. It's not that, hey, you're just publishing a bunch of content and everything else magically is being taken care of, right? You are connecting with the right people. You're sort of, even if, let's say, you're publishing a podcast with someone you want to close, you are being sure you're speaking with different people. If anyone, you also mentioned that if anyone connects with you, you sort of sending them a message. So there's a lot of other small pieces, which is where I think the expertise comes in, that hey, apart from just publishing content, there's a lot of other thing that also takes a little bit of time, but a lot of pieces of those. So can you just help me understand? You said there were three people when you started off, but in just perspective of how much time it takes to run something like this, if you can take one or two pillars, because I think still your strategy does revolve around a pillar and repurposing and distribution, right? So let's say a content pillar and a podcast or interview pillar, if you take those two and just say that, okay, how much time, bandwidth, money and tools or everything that it takes, can we just sort of have a account of that, just if someone wants to budget it out?
Yeah, let's see. So I had in the team the guy who is video editor, and I had in the team the guy who can write. Right. So from that perspective, I had the resources in house, and we only write about the things that we do. So we don't need to do a deep research. We can write fast because we know exactly what we are doing. Right? Situation, problem, solution. And when we write it like that, we write it sort of similar like we write it on LinkedIn. So it's easy to get pieces for distribution, right? And it doesn't take much time. Basically, I separate the article by main points, and have, what's the main point in this paragraph? Okay, it's this sentence. Add it on the visual. That's it. The visual then explains that text. So there is no, not much of thinking around it. Basically, there's a system that goes on, and then we just schedule it, or we post it organically, however do it goes. When it comes to the podcast, it's a little bit
So
different.
sorry, like this is sticking to
Uh-huh.
the content one. So it you had three people, uh, and let's say if but you weren't doing this full time, right? Like all the three people weren't just full time just doing marketing for Funky Marketing. There were other things they were also doing. So from a per
Look,
person,
we did more or less the same thing for the clients, right? So it
right?
was the same job at that first year from the
Correct.
start.
So how much of like one person's or the three people's bandwidth was taken in, let's say, just for your marketing?
I think most of the times they work on our stuff, right? Because at the first year, mostly I was the one working with the clients. And you always expect yourself to work more than the others. From that perspective, that's okay. But when you say, like, I just want to encourage people listening, it doesn't take much time. It's actually easy to do. When you know your customers, you know what is the service that you are offering or the product, and you have people who can write and people who can edit the videos. It's basically no brainer. You just need to get the right people inside those conversations so you can actually create the content. And if you know what you want to get out of the content, it's easy to set up the quality standard, right, from that perspective. So the quality is something that we didn't talk about, but that is non-negotiable from the start. So
Yeah.
from that perspective, that's basically it. If you go deeper into the podcasting, basically, as I said, I record it. Usually those are the people that I know or reach out by message to them, so there is not like long process to get them to the podcast, which can be a difficult thing sometimes. But I post a lot of content, and I was posting a lot of content back in the day, so not having the first episode wasn't an issue, right? So and when we started, basically, I was just asking them to give me their story, right? To extract things from them. So it's not something that requires me to go and prepare for each episode like you prepare for this one, right? So it's a different type, and I can just jump in and record as many episodes as I can in a short amount of time, and then basically I just get the nuggets, and and use them to create short things, and then just basically distribute them. And when it comes to the long pillars, I already mentioned, like, you upload episode to the Anchor. Now it's Spotify for podcasters, and then basically they do the distribution. You don't need to do it. You just need to upload the episode to YouTube. And from that perspective, that's also not a lot of time, right? It's basically easy. That's why I'm always saying to the people, this is you just need to start, right? Figure out, okay, this is our main content pillar. What can we do in house? Can we write? Can we do the research? Can we do the podcast? And then basically the other thing, it's easy. Just people can just Google the way they can distribute content to different channels, right? Maybe it's easy for Twitter, for LinkedIn, for Facebook, Instagram. I even don't recommend going in that many channels. Focus on one or maybe two. It's a little bit more difficult when it comes to the communities, for example, Reddit or Facebook groups, because they have rules and you need to get yourself inside the community to know how you can actually distribute the content. So
Yeah.
I would possibly avoid that from the start, and then see, okay, if we really need to be there, then we'll figure it out, how
Yeah.
do we do it.
Perfect. Okay. So no, that helps quite a bit. So from a pure,
Sorry, just to mention, we talk about 47 clients. Not all of them were huge. That's also to mention. Some of them were smaller ones, some of them were the bigger ones, but some of them were with 800 employees. So the big ones also came, because usually people say, "Aha, this grow from the start. You can attract smaller clients." Not necessarily. So depends
yeah.
on who's seeing your post, who you're creating relationships with, and and what you're talking about.
Perfect. Okay. So I think from a pure number standpoint, 6 months after you start a pillar, then you have to. So I think the process, just to sort of summarize it all in terms of cost, people, process, timelines, all of that is from a pure number standpoint. Maybe, and please correct me as I'm saying it, Nemanja. So as we spend maybe a week at max 2 weeks trying to figure out, hey, what's your narrative is. In that timeline, to what you do stuff is just speak with a lot of people, collect a lot of information, see who, like, maybe speak with different people, stakeholders in your company. It might take you lesser time than that to figure it out, very often. Once you have that, you then need to start creating a few pillar pieces of content, or a series of pillar pieces of content, which could either be like, there's a lot of different types, but the two that we discussed much more about was a text-based pillars and video-based pillars. Video-based pillars, if you go really fast, you could create enough pillars for like 6 months and 2 weeks, essentially, because you can just record all of them really quickly. When you are doing, let's say, video-based pillars, I think you mentioned that uh, have a you had a 80 to 90% of people who were your peers, and 10 to 20% of people who you really want to close. Depending on the company, you can change this ratio. And then for content, if you're doing text-based content, then you can write out those initial pillars, but later on you could just focus on also updating it with more people, like adding more instances of what other people said and making it better. So for podcasts, you're publishing them more regularly. For text, you're updating them more regularly than podcasts. For both of them, whether it's text, video, whatsoever, then you start repurposing, breaking it down into smaller content. It helps if you have if you have that, the narrative preset, you have your the same framework for, let's say, whatever be the type of content, so that when you're repurposing, you can keep the frame, or keep the framework, and quickly find how to repurpose it and find snippets or smaller versions of that, and then just repurpose it again repeatedly. When repurposing, pick one or two channels which are really really core to your business. It could be, for example, in your case, it was LinkedIn. It was also a few groups. That will probably be the case for most B2B SaaS companies, or most B2B tech companies. It's going to be something similar, where you're repurposing. Make sure you have, and then you also discussed how you had very small, or like very, a lot of very smart and like tiny practices across that. Like, for example, if someone is commenting, make sure you are linking your content in when you're replying to that. Or if someone is connecting, make sure you are sending a message back that's saying hi, right? Or if someone is you inviting someone to a podcast that you want to work with, also connect with the rest of the people in their team. So those are things that really amplify the entire, I think, the purpose or the entire impact of the entire strategy. Does that, I know I missed out a lot of things that you said, there's a lot of ways to break it down, but if someone had to take away like 2 minutes of worth of content, would this be a good chunk to look at?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I can try to do it in 30 seconds. The thing is, figure out what is your content pillar. Maybe it can one, it can be two. Look at them like on the middle. On the right side, we look at distribution of those big content pillars, big articles or big videos, like the full video. We do that on YouTube. We do that on on podcast platforms in a different way. We do that also on a website by having the links to the audio and video. On the other hand, on the left side, we have distribution of the smaller pieces. And then we have different platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, communities, whatever it is, organically. To that, if you want to shorten the sales cycles, we add advertising to make sure that the right people are consuming it. And then basically just act like a normal human and start creating relationship with those people.
Perfect, love it. So Nemanja, just one last question for the day. If you had to give a quick elevator pitch for Funky Marketing, what would that look like?
Yeah, basically we work with B2B tech and SaaS companies to create growth strategies for them. And if you are a company around 5 millions to 10 millions in revenue with long sales cycles, specializing in high, and have a high ICV, basically you don't need a VP of marketing or CMO in-house, you need us.
Perfect. Love that, Nemanja. Thank you so much for doing this again. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I love the thing, and it's always good that somebody takes you through the things and basically says, okay, but what about this? What about this? What did you exactly do here? What did you exactly do here? Because often we forget some of the things, some of the smaller things that actually makes the difference.
Yeah. I hope someone just starts doing this at least in-house, like in this week, right, of the day that it gets published. So I love
Yeah,
that.
I always tell to the people, like, it's out there. It's the first article that I published. There isn't even a graphic over there. When you click to it, you go to the YouTube video of like 10 minutes that explains everything.
Yeah.
So basically, if people listening here want to actually do it and go through it, there's an article on funkymarketing.net website.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nemanja. It was great having you. Cool.
Yeah, thank you as well. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the TLDR podcast. In case you're wondering, Spear Growth is a marketing agency. We help B2B SaaS companies like yourself with ads and SEO. Check out our website at speargrowth.com. That is SPEARGROWTH.com. Just like this, every episode starts with a 1-minute summary of what we discuss. Pick the next episode to listen to based on what you can implement right away. And after you implement any of these tactics and see an impact, we'd appreciate you drop us a note on podcast@speargrowth.com.